Sticking with the biblical theme, the questions I have are very reasonable and logical as far as I can see. And, with this euphoria at this moment in time, with the revitalisation of Christendom from our modern day gurus, namely Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand, Ben Shapiro has always been inclined, as what I can gather, but they all seem to sidestep things that they just don't want to pay any mind to, don't want to bring the spotlight on, don't want to accept, don't want to engage with. Why is that? And Islam is identical. There are so many chapters and verses in the Quran that the vast majority of Muslims have no idea about. They're there, it's just that during their indoctrination and during their childhoods, when they was being filled with the propaganda, the parents or teachers would always skip over these lines and verse and on to the thing that could remotely be considered to be, wonderful and beneficial to man. But when you read the Quran, it is in actual fact an abomination, and Muhammad is an abomination. And when you read the Old Testament, Jehovah, Yahweh is an abomination. And there's so many instances of vile actions which just cannot be mitigated for a benevolent, loving God. They can only be rationalised as a very hateful, heinous God, a deceptive one on all fronts. And so just to give some simple illustrations, when God said to Abraham, take your first son Isaac and sacrifice him on that stone, well, that is an abomination. When God did to Job what he did, that also is an absolute abomination. When God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah for their sodomy, for their acts of sodomy, that was an act of abomination. And so there was no compassion there, no consideration for people having perverse sexual preferences, which he was responsible for, had he been the true God. And then when God decided that his plan for this utopia on earth, where everybody would worship him, wasn't going to plan, and so then he decided he wanted to destroy it, and so he sent the flood and then destroyed it. And so we've got instance after instance after instance of this abominable behaviour in the Old Testament and in the Quran. And yet billions of people are completely blind to it. They probably have never even seen these passages and verses in these books because they've never been promoted and promulgated by the church gurus, by the religious gurus. It's all been a facade, it's all been smoke and mirrors, and all these people have bought into it line and verse because they've never actually been bothered to read the books for themselves and ask questions, because it seems that the vast majority of people cannot in actual fact ask questions. They can only receive information like automaton. So that information, why lots of people don't have a monologue or a dialogue internally, answers a lot of questions. And so when we look at why we have 3/4 of the world blind following authority, and in recent times a classic example, and how they get heinously violent towards people who think about things and choose from their options, I can well agree with God just to destroy the lot and start again, because the human race is a fucking shitfest. And I've never been too partial to it. I've only ever met one in a fucking thousand that I've had any adherence to or would like to spend any time with, because they do despicable, disgusting things, and they don't seem to be able to see the errors of their ways. But when you've got people very intelligent like Jordan Peterson, and he can so eloquently look into, the book of Jonah and tell you some wonderful metaphysical message that's deep in there, which only 1 in a trillion people could ever decipher. And then he's speaking about, why Moses did this and why Abraham did that, and, then we've got all different scenarios about the brilliance of Cain and Abel's story and all this, and he's done these biblical lectures and all this, for 1 in a billion that's got the intellect to kind of like get a little bit with you and think, okay, that's not a bad story, you're just telling a story about a story, to be fair, Peterson, because look, what I say is simply this: if those stories were what Peterson reckons they are, then what sort of a God instructed those stories to be written? A God that didn't want anybody except 1 in a billion to be able to comprehend what he was saying. And so this then fits very nicely with what many scholars say about the teachings of Jesus. He had one teaching for the idiot and another teaching for the Gnostics, and it was simply because the idiots would never in a million years get anything he was saying, so he just used to speak in these stupid little illustrations and parables, and so tell the real stuff to the Gnostics, who would keep all the secrets hidden from the idiots, you see. And so why is it then with people like Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand and Ben Shapiro, who rates himself as a super duper quadruple genius, why aren't they picking and choosing things they don't want to look at in these Bibles? Why aren't they addressing the dichotomous nature and the pure deception and the hate and all these scenarios which exhibit clearly that their God is by no stretch of the imagination all loving? And on top of that, what actually took place was the Old Testament, compiled over 1,500 years, then superseded by the New Testament. And in the New Testament, Jesus was overriding what the abomination of a father said in about every one of his verses. And he would always say, it is written that this, that and the other, but what I say is this. So he was relating to, of course, what was written in the Old Testament. Of course, he wasn't blaspheming overtly, but he was. He said, look, anything the old man says, right, he was old school, he was bitter and twisted, and I think he was a bit fucking senile, to be fair, and for sure he was a narcissist and a megalomaniac, but forget about all that shit. Come with me and turn the other cheek and be kind and be loving and all that stuff. Okay, great. But why even have an allegiance to the abomination of a father? Why not just have another God come about? Jesus is another God from the real God. Why just not strike off Yahweh as an abomination, as the demiurge, which he evidently was? And then continue with the new God, Jesus. But no, I and the Father are one. So therefore, Jesus was in actual fact then responsible for all the abomination that he perpetrated as the Father in the Old Testament. But then I had a change of thought, thinking, well, if I'm going to get people to follow me, worship me, then I've got to be a little bit more reasonable to them. And so then it was all these parables which were nice and all that, and nobody was asked to sacrifice their firstborns, and he never, sent the Spirit over the land, the Passover, to kill all children which pertain to people who weren't bowing down and worshipping the demiurge. What an abomination from the beginning to the end. What an abomination, people. Where do these sickos get off in believing and think that's benevolent? It's all sick and evil. And it's a complete inversion, because the devil himself doesn't do anything like that, has never done anything like that. There wasn't a single word where he did anything like that. He was, killing millions with the plague, and then he was casting down fire and brimstone and burning the whole fucking township because they were pushing it uphill sexually. And on and on and on and on. What did Satan do? He just said, look, that idiot, the demiurge, right, wants to keep you dumb as fuck. If you eat from that tree of fruit, then you will at least know what them fuckheads are doing. Yeah, those fuckheads, because it says Elohim. Elohim is plural for God. So it's gods. So you will know what those gods are doing, so-called fucking gods, lording it up. A bit like the gods today, people, to be fair, don't you think? A bit like the kings and queens, and a bit like the globalists. They're no different, spilling out their bullshit, you know, in ways in which, you know, are very difficult to discern by the average person. And that's why they create lawyers to write the law, which we have to abide by. And if we want to look into the law, we can never make head or fucking tail of it, because it's all written in crypt. And so then you need one of them to interpret it for us. That's convenient, isn't it? Don't you think it's all convenient? It's all so very, very convenient. So, Russell Brand, somebody send this video to him. Fucking Jordan Peterson. Yeah, your biblical fucking stories are great. Let's start looking at some of the stuff in these scriptures which is not so great. Please, come on, the world is depending on you. And so we want to know for a bit of fucking truth about this shit that's, you know, having a revitalisation at this moment in time, because as far as I'm concerned, it's all fucking evil propaganda. And it's all asked about face, and it's all backed by an agenda from the one world government and the one religion and all that sort of stuff. I have no adherence absolutely whatsoever to any religion. Never have had, never will have. There has been things that have happened to me which are very, very curious, but I don't have any allegiance to Jesus or Yahweh, anything like that, being the creator of the cosmos. No thanks, just metaphors. I use my intelligence, which was a very rare gift, seemingly, because not too many people can think, you know, more than 1 + 1. And so, you know, there's so much that isn't said, isn't there? And there's so many people now terrified to say anything. And even those who are brave enough to say, then they're getting destroyed and cancelled and defriended and all this sort of stuff. And yet the masses are just like pigs in shit. And so I've said over years and years and years, I'm really indifferent to Armageddon. I'm telling you now, because I don't have any allegiance to this human body, because I know I'm not the body. And albeit I have a wonderful daughter, she's the apple of my eye, well, I'm confident that wherever we're going to go, we will go together then. And we'll dig up this fucking road here. Dig up this road. It's Caribbean or Jamaican. It means get the fuck out of here. And so, yeah, you know, consciousness doesn't die, spirit doesn't die, it goes on and on and on. This is just a school, and, you know, some people learn from it, most people apparently are not learning from it, so it's superfluous for them to be here, so it's kind of like they'll have to keep coming back and doing the 3rd, 2nd and 4th grade over and over and over and over and over before they elevate to the 5th grade, before, you know, they're even remotely ready to start looking inside themselves, God forbid. So when, you know, people say that Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand, you know, they're controlled opposition, well, you know, when you rationalise it, you can go, well, why aren't they broaching these things? What is it? You know, they seem to want to have their fingers in pies with all this different stuff, which is a no-brainer. Well, why don't you look at something a bit more meaningful, a bit more sinister? Because it's a whole lot more sinister. All that shit in the Bible is a whole lot more sinister than what's going on today. What's going on today is just pretty irregular skullduggery. That shit in the Bible, that was the deepest of devilish stuff going on. And so I would be very, you know, happy to see some of these modern day gurus start broaching this shit and, you know, talking about it from a position whereby you didn't want something to be loving and beautiful. Because if you impose that onto the story of Jonah and the story of the Ark and the story of Cain and Abel, then you're going to see that. But why don't you just see the fucking evil, where God created creatures that were bloodthirsty and just always lusted after evil? What the fuck was going on for a benevolent God? Okay, so Eve made a mistake. So you curse the whole of mankind, and you're up there and you're in glee and you're joyous about all the pain and suffering that trillions and trillions of people are having to suffer because one of our remote fucking metaphorical ancestors supposedly perpetrated. Really? You go fuck yourself. You go fuck yourself right fucking now. That's what I've got to say about that. And so, when we look into not so popular writings or sayings of Jesus, we can see that there's a lot of stuff which wasn't so beautiful and benevolent and compassionate. There was somewhat of a righteous tyrant in there, and one story I shall tell because there's too many, but it's the one about the olive tree. Everybody knows the one about the olive tree. Where is the benevolence in that fucking story? So Jesus one day is hungry and he sees an olive tree and it's got leaves on it, so it's alive, and so he goes over to the olive tree, but on close inspection he discerns that there is in actual fact no olives on it, so there's no food to satiate his hunger. So in his anger he chastises the tree and instructs it that it would never bear fruit again for the rest of its life. And then within a few seconds before other people's high witnesses' very eyes, the tree withered and died. And Jesus walked on, probably to kill a billion other trees that he came upon, because it wasn't season for fucking olives at that time, and so because of his anger and his wrath, then, you know, doing all that. And I've read loads of other stories of Jesus in his childhood, how, you know, he would just kill birds in front of people to show them their power, and then when people had a problem with Jesus, he'd make them blind or lame or even kill them in lots of instances. All this stuff's there, people, if you want to look for it. So, you know, I think we just need to be very careful about believing anything in the abstract, because the abstract is Maya, it's illusion, it's deception, it's, you know, what can you say? If it's Maya, illusion, deception, then it's evil. Where can we find truth? The only truth you're ever going to find is at your deep-rooted core. When you step outside, go beyond your ego into the pure isness of consciousness, God consciousness, cosmic consciousness, the essence of you, the spirit. That is the only truth. This is all Maya, this is all just a fantasy, it's a projection, just to, you know, God having fun, the cosmos having fun. You know, because at the end of the day, if there is no reality to it, if it is all Maya, and human suffering is all Maya and all the rest of it, then it is perfect, isn't it? It's like if we, you know, commit murder in our dream. It's fine. It's perfect. Why? Because nobody got hurt. So anybody that has murderous tendencies, and I'm sure there's many of you watching who have wanted to murder your ex-husband or your current husband or wife or whatever, or your neighbour, and doubtless, you know, that's permeated through your dreams. And so in your dream you took satisfaction from the murder of said persons, and then you woke up with impunity into this realm. You see? But if this realm is only the same, only it appears to be of a longer duration, but if when we die we just go back to source and this was just another dream, then it is perfect, isn't it? Because it's just dreams within dreams within dreams within the mind of God or the cosmos. And cosmos is inventing, you know, all of us that are doing this, and the birds and the bees and all that sort of stuff. It's all potentially very wonderful. Lots of it is wonderful. It's a wonderful illusion. But of course, if there's going to be beauty, then there has to be the opposite, and so it's unavoidable that we're going to have evil in the world if we have love. And so when we are playing at evil and love in our dreams, well, there's no consequence to either one of those, is there? And so, you know, some people could be saying now, oh, are you trying to tell me that there's no purpose, no consequence to my actions? Well, what if we all thought like, what if we did all think like that? Millions and trillions of people have thought like that in their fucking lives, and we're living as a result of that. Millions of people today think like that. They don't give a fuck about life, and they will fucking end it in any given opportunity, just for fun. Just like people moving a chess piece on a board, they're killing millions every fucking day around the world. People do think like that, and I think a whole lot more people would think like that if they could get away with it. In actual fact, I'm sure that they do think like that, but they don't act upon their thoughts because they know they can't get away with it. So don't be giving me any fucking wonderful benevolence of the human being, because I don't believe in that motherfucker either. I believe human beings are all fucking tyrants, they're all self-serving, they're all lying, deceptive, fucking lame creatures, far from perfection. And so, if a god from time to time just decides to wipe the board clean, like with a nuclear holocaust, fair play. You know, I can't fucking fault you on that one, because, you know, I can't see anything really worth saving, to be honest. But if there's powers on this earth that, you know, can filter out a few of the good ones and get rid of the chaff, so separating the wheat from the chaff, well, okay, I'm all up for that one. Because I know I'll be the one of them that's existing. And I can look around me, I can see a fucking thousand of people. In actual fact, there's barely a single person that I can see with my eyes in my vicinity that I wouldn't want to save. Just all stupid, dumb fucking abominations. You know. Where's the benevolence? Where are these saints and these wonderful, endearing, compassionate people? Where are they? They're most certainly not in politics. They're most certainly not in government. Well, they're most certainly not, you know, in all these towns and villages around us, you know, because you can very easily discover that. You just go knocking on a door and say, excuse me, you know, government's not paying me any benefit. I wonder if you can just help me out. Oh, fuck off and go jobs, plenty jobs around. How many people would turn you away? You know, if you put out your bowl for some alms, how many people would put something into it? These are the questions I've got, people. And, you know, in my channel, I'm always putting people's ego to the test. And this is why I'm always jousting with everybody. So you get to thinking about yourselves, and you get answering these questions yourselves. You look inside your heart, really, truly, and ask yourself these fucking questions. How benevolent really are you? Particularly Christians. How many of the tenets of Christendom do you actually live by? Not a single one, I shouldn't wonder. Except praying. You may pray for a new car or a new house, or, you know, a bird with big tits, but other than that, you ain't praying for no fucking poor and meek. I'm sure of that. And so, a bit more controversy for you there, people. Have a great day.